Hi everyone, this is Dr. Rashekar Reddy from KL College of Pharmacy, working as an assistant professor in the Department of Pharmaceutical Chemistry. And this is a week 4 video for the International FDP on Environment and Sustainability, organized by D.B. Patel College of Engineering in collaboration with UNESCO. And in this video, I'm going to talk about greenness of chemical processes, green metric approach. So in the previous videos, the two videos which I uploaded earlier. In this video, I'm going to mainly discuss about whatever the green metrics are actually used in the pharmaceutical industry, how they will be used to test and compare greenness of the processes and products which they are manufacturing, especially in the pharmaceutical industry. And also how these green metrics cover all the areas, starting from resources and materials, processing, cleaning, and life cycle assessment of APIs, renewable resources, so all these kinds, and along with the applications of these metrics in with respect to API in pharma industry. In the previous videos, I just shown that green chemistry. So what is green chemistry? How these green chemistry principles can be used in pharma as well as chemical industry for making the products environment eco-friendly as well as sustainable. So these are the main 12 principles. I am just quickly going through the 12 principles. It is nothing but prevention of the wastage and including atom economy and preparation of less hazardous chemical materials, and designing safer chemicals for the usage of humankind, and also using safer solvents and other auxiliaries like catalysts, designing energy efficient methodologies, and also using renewable energy sources as well as renewable materials for the manufacturing of chemical substances, and also reduce the derivatives production in the particular chemical synthesis, and also reducing the catalysis process and also reusable catalysts, and designing a proper degradation process for the produced compounds. And there must be a real-time analysis for pollution prevention in that particular industry with respect to pharma as well as chemical industries, and inherently safer chemicals for safer methodologies for accident prevention. So these are all 12 principles, and on these 12 principles I'm going to discuss few concepts today. They are nothing but how these can be assessed in pharma as well as chemical industry. So the green metrics, nothing but this is the evaluation how so coming to this green metrics. So usually many pharma companies or some chemical companies, they market their products as green or sustainable. But how this is defined? Does it refer to any materials used to make the product, or does it include all the processing of that particular material? So are all of these process and materials included as part of assessment that extends back to the extraction of natural resources from the ground? So here the green metrics, they provide an objective measure of progress towards a broader goal of environment sustainability. So they are not only concentrating on only the waste produced from the during production process, and not only those things. And there were so many early attempts which were made. They are actually used to identify meaningful environment metrics only focused on the waste, quantifying the waste only. But now in the recent times there were few techniques, so they are actually incorporating many more principles of the green design, so which includes this Paul and Asta's 12 principles of green chemistry. So actually, if someone want to come close to this assessing sustainability of a process or a product, especially for this APIs or chemical compounds with respect to industries, so the green metrics should focus on something beyond waste, and they also should incorporate few things. Those are actually resource efficiency, nothing but like the mass, energy, waste, and atom economy. So these all four parts are actually part of the green chemistry principles, 12 principles, nothing but what kind of atoms we are incorporating, and minimizing the wastage and minimizing the intermediates, and incorporating the methodologies where energy efficient methodologies are used. And these are all things will be considered, has to be considered, not only focusing on the waste management or minimizing the waste, and also there has to be think about this resource efficiency also, and the environmental and healthy and safety profiles of the materials used in the process also should be addressed. And overall life cycle assessment has to be considered to think about renewable feedstock and other triple bottom line impacts across the entire life cycle of the product or service. So these are the concepts which has to be addressed by each company to follow these green metrics, and for addressing them, these green metrics are actually taken as a tool. So usually, if you see that there are 12 principles, I already shown you. So these green chemistry principles are actually they're delivering economical as well as environmental benefits. If you see this, if you think about atom economy, like how much amount of atoms you are incorporating into the product, whether they are available in the product or you're throwing something out as a waste. So based on the atom economy, so if you think environmentally, we are minimizing the waste formation. Nothing but byproduct formation is not there, and other intermediates are not there. So automatically we are reducing the environmental burden. Then likewise, if you think economically, so more from less, nothing but you are incorporating few atoms and but you are getting more product. Okay, so this is incorporating actually nothing but giving the value of materials and reducing the cost also with respect to economical point of view. Likewise, if you see here all the points like solvent reduction, so which reduces the solvent waste and also reduce environmental burden. And if you think about economical factors, nothing but it reducing cost, obviously, because we are reducing the capacity requirements and less energy also required to evaporate this solvent waste also. And reagent optimization, nothing but the optimization of catalytic compounds ratios with respect to product, nothing but the stoichiometric balances, and using recyclable catalytic compounds or recyclable reagents. So they're actually minimizing again environmental burden. Not only that, so economically they are very highly efficient and also highly selective. So automatically they will impact the cost also. They will give cost effective methodologies. And coming to convergency, so they are nothing but there are some process, nothing but there are multiple ways of producing one particular compound. If you think like that, so which is actually economic and also eco-friendly, that has to be taken up. Not only that, availability of starting material sometimes may be a factor, but we have to think about the convergent processes. So which reduces the cost as well as reduces the environmental burden. And not only that, energy reduction by using energy efficient methodologies, nothing but microwave irradiation techniques as well as ultrasonication techniques. They will actually energy efficient techniques with respect to synthesis of a particular chemical substance. So automatically they will reduce the cost, also reduce the time also. And in situ analysis, so sometimes we have to analyze the compounds during the process also, so that also has to be taken care. And safety, this is the most important one. Designing of non-hazardous materials and processes which reduce the risk of exposure and release of explosive gases into the environment, so which reduces automatically the economical burden as well as the environmental burden. So to address all these things, there are certain metrics which are actually considered for applying sustainability, especially in pharma as well as chemical industries. So there is a simple and very effective concept that is actually Sheldon E factor. So this E factor was conceived by Sheldon. He's a scientist, so as a means to highlight the amount of waste generated to produce 1 kilogram of chemical product in different parts of the chemical industry. So it is not only stressing about the starting materials, or it is not only stressing about particular reagent substances. So it is actually addressing all stages of the synthesis part. So this E factor also called as mass intensity or percentage mass intensity. So this mass intensity can be expressed as it is a ratio of mass of all materials used in the process divided by mass of product. So here the mass, which is not including water. So most of the companies, they are considering water is not an important aspect to include in this calculating this mass intensity factor. So but some industries, they will consider as water is also very important entity for calculating these green metrics. So here this mass intensity can be expressed as actually weight by weight units. So there are few companies are actually taking care, actually attempted this green metrics process, nothing but this E factor calculations for optimizing their in compound productions. So in that especially, so if you go a little bit deeper into mass intensity, it takes into account the percentage of yield of that particular product formation through one route, And also we have to think about convergence here and reaction stoichiometry, solvent usage as well as reagents usage in the reaction mixer. And this covers everything that is put into the reaction vessel. Okay, whatever we are just incorporating into that reaction, that has to be addressed by this, that definitely will be addressed by mass intensity. It also includes all mass used in acid base, nothing but, for example, for worker process, sometimes we might have used acid for neutralizing, sometimes we use base for neutralization, and for improving solubility, sometimes we use some salt forms and organic for worker process, we will use some organic solvent washes like with methanol, ethanol, or sometimes with chloroform extractions. So all these organic solvents also has to be included, and crystallization processes, and sometimes the solvent switching also. We'll change the solvents to improve the polarity or to improve the non-polarity based on the reaction conditions and based on the reaction, nothing but product characteristics. So this mass intensity will also include solvent intensity. So this solvent intensity is nothing but the mass of all solvents used except water, and that is divided by the mass of product. It is also expressed in weight by weight and water intensity. So this is one important factor, and a few industries, they are considering this water intensity factor as a green metric approach. So mass of all water used for washing and water used for incorporating into your product, or water used for workup processes of the product, all has to be addressed by the water intensity. So coming to the third, actually one company like GSK, GlaxoSmithKline Pharma Company, they have done this assessment with the solvent efficiency, solvent intensity. So they have done a batch reaction for a period of time by using different kind of solvent systems, and they actually given one kind of data which is actually impacting so much on the environment. If you see here in the figure, so there are actually three kinds of solvent systems. So there are some solvent systems called actually hydrocarbons. They are actually halogenated hydrocarbons, and there are some alcohols and some polar and non-polar solvents with different boiling point variations, and their chemical classification is given here. If you see here, so most of the companies, they are actually using these kind of solvents because they are easily available, and also they have abundant usage in the pharma industry. For example, if you take chloroform, carbon tetrachloride, even benzene, non-polar and polar solvents. These are actually comprising of, many of them are actually non-polar and polar solvents. Basically, the pharma compounds, the APIs are actually non-polar in nature. So most of the compounds are polar and non-polar. It's actually mixed kind of thing. That's why these people are actually using halogenated hydrocarbons, and they are actually giving much impact on the environment. And there are some considerable issues with some kind of compounds like alcohols and some ester derivatives also there, but people are not using them frequently and much. And there are only few issues with a few compounds like water is there, butanol, and butyl acetate and isopropyl acetate and propyl acetate. But these things are actually used very occasionally in the pharma industry. So this work was done by GlaxoSmithKline. They addressed that most of the product formation, nothing but the procedures, they require a specialized kind of halogenated hydrocarbons, and which is actually giving much like impact on the environment. So this has to be again considered into during the designing of the chemical processes. So nothing but we have to use the safer solvents. So here the solvent means it is not only applicable for using incorporating into the reaction mixer, and it is also used for washing of the reactors, and it is also used for workup process also. So we are using number of solvents in the for producing one API. So that's why solvents are very important things, has to be taken care. So coming to life cycle assessment, if you see this life cycle assessment is actually a methodology that expands the environment impact assessment beyond the usual gate-to-gate boundaries of a manufacturing unit. So this is typically known as actually cradle to grave assessment, in which the resource consumption, nothing but the pollutants emitted and also environmental impacts, these all has to be assessed at each step, including the extraction of raw materials, how we are actually procuring the raw materials, and the production, which kind of methodology we are using, and the transportation, nothing but after the product formation, nothing but coming into one dosage form, how it will be transported into the market, and sales, distribution, use and its final disposal also has to be taken care and has to be evaluated properly in this life cycle assessment. So for example, I will give you one example here. So here there is a reaction between starting materials A and B in presence of a solvent D. They are giving a product D. Okay, but here typically this reaction, so we cannot consider that. So in this reaction, the true environmental impact is only because of starting material A and maybe this B may be a reagent. Okay, because of starting material A and because of reagent B and because of solvent D. So not only that, and during this process we are using a number of chemical substances or maybe electricity what we are using, and the reactors what we are using, and the water and some certain gases and some solvents for washing. So all these has to be addressed. So a chemist, he has to attempt to apply green chemistry principles to no longer look at the reaction of only this ABCD, only this ABD for producing the C in isolation, but also must consider the broader impacts of producing reactants, purifying products, and disposing the waste also. So in other words, we can say that it is necessary to expand the boundaries of their immediate responsibility and evaluate the greenness of the entire cycle, entire life cycle of the product formation. So this has to be taken care. Not only thinking about the starting material A and reagent P and solvent D. Not only these three things, there are a number of factors which are actually going to be impact the environment by carbon emission. So for example, if you see here, so this is a typical life cycle of the pharma product development. You see here, so this methodology actually explains a framework of directly applicable green metrics for the life cycle impacts. So these metrics can be reported as direct inventory data. For example, life cycle energy, so life cycle mass, life cycle emissions, and these can be measured as individual potential impacts such as global warming, acidification, etc., or as an average aggregate score, indicators, and some indexes for high level comparison. So this application of LCA metrics is still not a widespread practice in the pharma industry. If you see here, so this is one typical data obtained from GSK again, GlaxoSmithKline report. So here they given the relative contribution of chemicals, solvents, and internal processes on the environmental life cycle of producing one active pharmaceutical ingredient. So if you see here, typically this purple color, which is indicating the chemical incorporation, nothing but the impact of the chemicals in the environment, and this yellow color, which is nothing but impact of the solvents, and this blue color, which is nothing but internal components like water, electricity, some other kind of things which will be actually included here. So if you see here, there are different processes like total organic carbon and photochemical ozone creation potential and greenhouse gases release and acidification impact on the environment and eutrophication impact on the environment. If you see this figure, you can see that it is clearly indicating that there is a much impact of the solvent on the environment. Okay, in all the cases. Okay, if you see energy, solvent is actually playing a major role. And if you see the total organic carbon, here some internal things, and as well as the incorporation of the chemicals also contributing more here. You see here the ozone creation potential. So this is majorly affected by the solvents, and also acidification. The solvents are actually playing a crucial role here. That's why, so while choosing the solvent, one has to take much care, and this has to be assessed by that green metrics. So this assessment is actually providing key insights such as the large impact that solvents causes impact in the life cycle context. So see here, so this cradle to gate LCA for pharma product in device showing contributions of raw materials and certain production and transportation and several other impacts. You see here in different LCA, like life cycle assessment of a formulated product, raw materials were shown to have a large contribution. You can see here. So raw materials are actually, so water will also be considered as a raw material here. So they are actually contributing much in this life cycle assessment. And coming to these comparisons, so see here, already told, just I shown you previously, like one product which is prepared from A, in presence of reagent B with solvent C. But for example, if you see, if you think about convergence, if one product can be produced by 3 or 4 different routes, but the thing is that the availability of the raw materials and the usage of solvents, it has to be considered there. For example, you consider that there are 4 routes, okay, like A, B, C, D. You see that A route, B route, and C route and D route. With respect to other parameters like the green metrics like mass energy, nothing but intensity of the energy, and gross net, POCP, and greenhouse gas releasing, and acidification, eutrophication, and total organic composition, and finally impacting the ozone layer. So you see all these things. If you see that the D route to D is much efficient because it is impacting very less with respect to all metrics. Okay, so we have to consider this kind of route, not like so. For example, route A, where it is actually the raw materials are very abundantly available. So even though they are renewable resources also, we have to think about the impact on the environment with respect to all these metrics. So these green metrics is actually giving some insights for choosing a better product cycle, better product schema to reduce the impact on the environment. So if you see that there are some important categories, this has to be assessed for deciding which kind of process design has to be made by the upper level management. So they has to think about net life cycle mass of the materials and life cycle energy, nothing but what kind of energies we are actually incorporating, and is it energy efficient, nothing but is it advanced technology or not, and what is actually giving the global warming potential, like how much carbon dioxide footprint is actually releasing with respect to the product formation, with respect to one unit product formation, and life cycle water wastage, nothing but it is water footprinting, and also oil natural gas depletion, like whether for example we are using some non renewable sources like oil and gases for energy production. So these has to be also addressed. Acidification potential, for example releasing of sulfur gases into the air which will cause acid raining, and eutrophication potential, nothing but the phosphate release into the phosphate gas release into the atmosphere. These all has to be addressed while choosing a perfect solvent. And the photochemical ozone creation potential and total organic carbon, human toxicity. So this is actually expressed as dichlorobenzene equivalence, and ecotoxicity. This is also explained as DCB equivalence, and land usage. So how much land area we are using for the product formation, like product design, not only during synthesis, and also for distribution, and also for sales purpose. These all has to be considered for addressing this LCA for designing particular green metrics. So see here, this is one representation from the GSK again. So this is actually baseline carbon footprint by different stages of life of a particular product, pharma product. For example, if you see here, so the production and operation, nothing but starting from the reacting materials and producing operations and cleaning and making it ready for supply. So this is actually only contributing 90% of carbon footprint. Okay, but when it comes to materials, nothing but how we are obtaining raw materials and how we are supplying, nothing but the packaging things and the transportation for materials, raw materials procurement and supply to the particular salesman's. These all things will be actually giving 41% of share among this carbon footprint released by one particular active pharmaceutical ingredient. But coming to distribution, it is only coming 1%, and coming to product use, when it is reaching the customer, how the customer usage is actually impacting on this particular carbon footprint by this API. So it is around 39%. It is even including the disposal process also. So if you see this, majorly the transportation and the materials what we are using for packaging, it is the contributing factor for more carbon footprint, and followed by the product usage during the life cycle of a particular material in the consumer hands, how they are dealing. So this is also actually giving some contributing carbon footprint for this particular product. And coming to conclusions, so these green metrics, whatever now we discussed about mass intensity, percentage of atom economy, and this ozone depletion properties and solvent intensity. So these all green metrics. So one has to choose. This must be adopted for the context and continuously evaluated as their utility, applicability, and appropriateness. So based on their product and based on their production cycle, they have to assess it continuously and check for applicability. Okay, it is not applicable for all kinds of products. Okay, they should also be tested and validated regularly to ensure that they are successfully driving towards the desired goals of the organization and contributing for the sustainability. They must also be easily understood and accepted by key stakeholders, because it is not only applicable to only industry, because it has to be easily understandable for the transportation people and the community where they are nothing but the stakeholders, the ultimate stakeholder, the consumer. They have to understand how it has to be disposed and how it has to be handled. So all these has to be addressed perfectly after assessing the life cycle and proposing a particular green metrics for making the products as a green compounds. Okay, so without that we can say that it is a green product or something like that. Okay, thank you so much for your patient listening.